Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Breaking Bias Racing
No,
Podcast.
already fucked it. Already done. Cut.
Blatantly biased. Oh, I knew that would happen.
Oh, God.
Fantastic.
Good.
Yeah.
You rehearsed it. You rehearsed it before, and I heard you say it wrong, and I was like, I'm not going to correct him. Just
Yeah. I don't know. I just read Breaking Bias somewhere. Anyways, it happens.
yeah. Blatantly biased racing podcast. You know this isn't being edited out, so don't bother.
Yeah.
Welcome to the intro, everybody. Hello.
Yeah. We have
Yeah.
Mobile Chicken with us, and unfortunately, Jason is back. Hi, Mobile. Welcome back. A second appearance. What brings you here?
Well, I'm here to. I'm so bad at ad-libbing. I'm here to talk about F1 and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of gum.
Ah.
Oh, God. You didn't prepare that line, did you?
Off the dome.
Okay. I'm not sure
Some
what to
don't.
respond to.
That's
that.
fine.
My brain was like, can't think of response.
Yeah. Some dome, that is. So, Jason,
Yeah.
how are you, man?
Good, unfortunately, you're still here, but yeah, otherwise good. Yeah,
How was the
I'm looking
weekend?
forward to. Well, the weekend was good. I went to the beach last week, and this weekend I did absolutely nothing except cut down from 150 hours of O.J. Simpson footage to 6 hours. So it was a depressing weekend overall. I still think he did it. I'm not sure how the public feels, but yeah.
Does the glove fit? I mean,
It didn't. It didn't.
It did.
I'm glad he got off,
mean-
and then told everyone how he did it in a book called "If I Did It,"
Yeah.
which he lost the rights to, which is just gold. It's such a good story.
Yeah. Anyways,
Anyway.
I mean, since we're talking about all these things, let's start the podcast on a very important question. Donald Trump shooting, was it staged or not?
Well, I mean, putting it in F1 context, I think clearly the shooter is about as good as Alpine is at developing a car in terms of shooting ability. So he was like the Alpine of presidential assassins. And if you want, we can do a podcast where we rank presidential assassins, comparing them to F1 teams. But maybe
Of
different
course.
week. We need to prepare
Some
that.
other time. Mobile?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm waiting in on this as well.
Is this an
Oh,
actual
fantastic.
question?
Yeah. It was summed up. It was something. There's a brilliant.
I thought we were going to end there.
No. I saw a fantastic TikTok the other day, which kind of sort of the guy pokes around the corner and goes, "Oh, someone just tried to assassinate Trump." He went, "Oh, I don't know how to feel about that." And then he goes, "But they missed." And he went, "I don't know how to feel about that either." That sums up my whole feelings on the kind of situation, really.
Yeah, that was kind of mine as well. I was like, what an interesting story. Oh, he's alive. It's not that interesting anymore.
Yeah, it's still there.
I was like, I'm happy he's alive, but I was kind of excited to see the media reaction. But I
Yeah.
suppose it's probably best not to want someone dead just for a media reaction. I guess that's probably
Very true.
the sign of a psychopath.
It's all right. I mean, there are a few.
I was
Anyways,
joking, by
enough-
the way, but that just went down like a. Anyway, doesn't matter.
It went down perfectly.
The somber tone made that very serious there. Sorry
Yeah.
about that. Yeah.
Anyways, enough of bullshit. Let's get to Formula One now.
Right, yes.
I mean, a lot. Yeah. First 4-5 minutes they're for nonsense, apparently. I mean, actually, the entire podcast is for nonsense. But still, who's counting?
Accurate. Yeah.
And I think since there are a lot of things we talk about on this podcast, the blatantly biased racing podcast,
Good job.
at least once I'll get it right. But there was one thing I actually came across. It was actually from Jason only. And I think it's worth talking about it. First I'll set the table for it. I'll let you rant. Let me set the table. Let Mobile give his speak his piece. Then I'll let you rant for half an hour. Because I think it's going to be that long.
It's not going to be. It's going to be 10 minutes max.
I mean, that's still long. Anyways, look, there are apparently you touched on you had a long rant. I think you can add it in the video as well, the screenshot of
Yeah.
it, where you talked about the fact that there are quite a lot of fans that actually credit the Mercedes success from 2014 till 2021 to Lewis Hamilton. While you think it should be vice versa, where it should not be a case where Lewis Hamilton was responsible for Mercedes' success. On the contrary, it should be Mercedes being responsible for Lewis Hamilton's success. So before I get to you, Mobile, what's your take on the whole thing?
I brought up Jason's tweet next to me now, just so I've got to have a frame of reference to kind of what I'm talking about, because it's just a long old thing. There's different bits, kind of. It's fine. Give me something to do while I was cooking dinner. There's definitely some good points within it, and I think there's some stuff that I do agree with. I think there's a really good point you make where you sort of said in F1 the car is more important, and in a tight championship with two close cars, that's when the driver makes the difference. And you know, I think there's a lot of things we can get on board with. If the person who wins a championship is normally the guy who has the fastest car, and if it's a few people with the fastest car, then it's a conversation about who's best, etc. And that it's difficult to then. My then counter argument to that is whether I think the question of the argument you're kind of saying that it was almost Mercedes made the best car, and therefore just about anybody who could have sat in that car would have kind of replicated what Lewis has done. I know I'm jumping around kind of the points you made, but in the sense...
No, I'll get to my point, but I wouldn't say that 100%. But
no.
Anyway, yeah.
That kind of... This was
I'm sure we have... I think we have the same idea here.
Yeah, but in that old kind of mentality, I think Williams used to have it a lot of the time as well, where anyone could be plugged in and kind of win the championship. It's kind of why... Williams ran through so many drivers in their kind of glory years as well. It's part of why, Damon Hill jumped out of that and they put Heinz Harald Frentzen in it, because there was a belief that they could just get the cheaper, in their view, more talented people, and they would just jump in and immediate success. I think it's in my mind, it's not as simple as who the people who have the fastest car are automatically then going to move on and have all that success. I think there's so many other kind of factors to put into place as well. And I think, there's plenty of examples of history where you have these really kind of big successful teams then getting that kind of big successful driver, but it falls apart or it doesn't move on to stuff. And again, you've got your more recent examples of like Sebastian Vettel to Ferrari or something like that, or just about anybody to Ferrari really, with the exception of with some. It's not as simple as if we jump back to, let's say, 2013, when there was all those kind of machinations about who was going to go in the car. There were rumours that Schumacher could have stayed on there. There were the likes of Hülkenberg and De Resta thrown around as well. I know it's difficult to say because obviously we're living in this reality where those people did what they did, and we have a basis for what we think of them. So it's very difficult to think, oh, cool, so let's put Paul De Resta in that Mercedes instead of Hamilton, and he is now a 6-time world champion. It's a very hard thing to kind of wrap around. I suppose what I'm kind of
I think Paul De Resta probably would have been beaten by Bottas, but
yeah, Paul De Resta would have beaten by everybody. But I'll save my Paul De Resta bias for another time. I think there are other factors at play when you have someone like a Hamilton in the car. I'm not going to go all the way and say, yes, it's because of him that Mercedes have had their success, but he still plays a large factor in that as well. His driving talents to push the team forward, but also there's so much of the other stuff behind the scenes that we don't always see, pushing the team forward, getting those right kind of people into the right situations, problem solving, all that kind of stuff as well. So, in an ideal world, you've got 100 people all contributing towards a car.
I'll try to tell you a slight angle that Jason had. What basically he got to, instead of Lewis,
I'm right here. I can explain it if you want.
Yeah,
I'm joking. Go
on. Instead of Lewis, if there was a Fernando Alonso or a Sebastian Vettel in that Mercedes, would the results have been similar? That's what Jason is precisely getting to, because what he means by when the entire thing.
If you want, let me rant it out and just so everyone kind of knows what page I'm on, because nobody listening to this has read the tweet. Let's be honest here. What I'm saying is, it's not a case that Lewis had no impact, right? I don't want to say that, because in the tweet, I'm pretty sure I did say, like, obviously Lewis was spectacular, his driving was spectacular, and he deserved those titles. He fought for those wins, he beat his teammates, he won in difficult situations. Like, Lewis does deserve credit for it. But when it comes to F1, the car is more important. And my point was, a lot of people are basically saying essentially that Mercedes is only successful because of Lewis. And that's what I was calling bullshit on. It's completely not the case. Because if Lewis had gone to Ferrari, for example, the likelihood is, given what we know about Ferrari. Now, again, I do take the point that it can change depending on the driver who's there, and that can change a lot as well. So maybe going back, it would have been a different impact. But just going on where we saw the car over those years, Lewis might have won in 2018, might have won in 2017. But, you know, Vettel was a very good driver in Ferrari and didn't win either. You know what I mean? So it's not like Vettel was a terrible driver in those years either. So my point is more, you know, if Lewis went to Ferrari in 2013, Lewis likely has won maybe 2 championships still, because he just wouldn't have had the car to fight for those. He couldn't have had 0. He had 1 at McLaren.
0.
He had 1 at McLaren. So he would have had at least 1.
As in, you said further.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I know what you mean. But yeah, no, I don't think he would have had. So the whole point I've made was, realistically, let's say he didn't go there and you don't replace the driver. Just my argument was, like, let's forget about replacing the driver first of all, just to make my point about how important the car is. And what I said was, if you get rid of Lewis in 2014, 15, 16, Rosberg is winning that championship, because Rosberg was in the title fight anyway. So let's say Rosberg could have delivered that championship because the other guys were so far behind Mercedes, right? So I think those 3 years, done deal, Rosberg would have won. Realistically, again, if we change the timeline, Rosberg, if he had 3 easy championship wins, he probably isn't retiring in 2017 or 2016.
Carrying on.
But
yeah.
Yeah, but let's just for argument's sake say he leaves, or it continues on the same timeline. 2017, maybe they don't win the championship if it's just Bottas, because Bottas was 12 points off of Vettel, right? And also, if Hamilton wasn't there and another driver wasn't replaced, I don't think the pressure would have been on Vettel. And I think 17 and 18 would have been a situation where maybe Vettel does win, because the pressure wouldn't have been there. Now, in saying that, the reason I say this is Bottas was still quite close in 2017. 2018, I don't think they win the title with just Bottas, because Bottas had a fucking terrible season, to be fair, in a Mercedes of that level. 2019, 2020, Bottas was second in the championship. So reasonably, you could say he would win the title, right? My whole point is, it's not to take away from what Lewis has done, because I could also say the same about Max, right? Like, this year, Max is the difference maker when we look at those fights between McLaren. But last year, if you took Max out, reasonably, you could say in that car, Sergio Perez was winning the championship. And Sergio Perez is nowhere near a Lewis Hamilton or a Max, right? So basically, it's like the whole point of the tweet was not to disparage Lewis and the work he's done. He delivered, and that's all you can ask of a driver. Here's the car, deliver for us. But to say that Lewis is the reason for Mercedes' success, I just think is unfair to everyone at Mercedes and just not accurate, because I think they may not have dominated in the way they did if they had Bottas and Rosberg, maybe, right? They wouldn't possibly have dominated. Well, it depends on who they replaced them with. But the thing is, though, right? The other thing is, people say, like, he did all the work. He that's where I disagree as well, because I remember in 2021 specifically, Hamilton said, I got in the simulator for the first time in years, basically. He hated being in the simulator. So, like, it's not like he was this, like, big-time development driver either. So, I don't think that matters as much as it used to. Like, Schumacher, you could say, really helped with the development of Ferrari back in the late 90s. But that was at a time when they could do unlimited laps. So Schumacher was out there driving those laps around Fiorano, and, you know, they were properly tested. It was a different time. Whereas now they can chuck Hamilton in, get him to do 5 laps, and then do that on a simulator. They don't need him to sit there all night in the simulator. So it's just a different time as well. So I think the simple argument is, yes, Lewis was spectacular. Yes, he delivered. Yes, he deserves a lot of credit for, you know, what Mercedes did during those years. But Mercedes does deserve, I think, the lion's share for developing the car, because without the car, it's a completely different story. So it wasn't so much just to credit Lewis, but all of those people are essentially saying, without Lewis, Mercedes isn't successful. And I think there's only realistically 2 seasons where you can say that's true, and that's 2017 and 2018. Every other season they would have won without Lewis, I think, personally. Apart from 2021, obviously, but that they didn't win that year. So Well, they did, but they did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't mention the war.
Yeah.
Long rant over.
And that was actually not that long. I actually
I told you.
expected you to go. Yeah. I mean, the problem is, look, when it comes to Lewis Hamilton and his success, it gets. I'll never understand this thing because since 2010 to 2013, it was about Adrian Newey winning the championships. All of a sudden, we got to 2014 to 2021. It was Lewis Hamilton winning the championships, and now we are back to Adrian Newey's cars winning the championship. I mean, it's nonsensical that we do things this way. It's very simple. Drivers make a difference, of course they do. But the point is, after a certain level, we are not in a situation like in 1990s, because just today I was hearing this podcast where in 1993, 1993 British Grand Prix, Michael Schumacher's car crashed at Cops, and he was driving a Benetton. He went back to the pits. He took
Spare car.
I'm forgetting his teammate's name. In 1993,
Patrese,
who was his
93.
teammate? Petresi, yeah, Riccardo Petresi. So he took Riccardo Petresi's car and he outqualified him by 1.9 seconds. And Riccardo Petresi was, I think, second or third in the championship the previous season with with Mansell in the other car. You just can't do those kind of things anymore. It's not.
Well, no, but in fairness, you can, because Hamilton did do that to Bottas a few times. Not
1.9
qualifying.
seconds.
No, but my point is Hamilton did outperform his teammates quite a lot. And
Of course.
and Max last year and this year compared to Perez, huge amount. So like I get what you're saying. 1.9 seconds
would
is
be
huge.
there.
Yeah,
that would be
1.9
there,
seconds
but
is huge. But my point is,
Yeah.
if you take the gap in comparison to the standard gap, then the gaps are still. You know what I mean? So I get what you
But
mean. In the
won't
90s, the gap is
but you
bigger.
won't compare Lewis with a Bottas or maybe even Nico Rosberg to a certain extent. You'll compare Lewis to an Alonso or a Vettel. These were the top three drivers throughout their era, that generation. You put either of them in those championship winning cars, they were winning, irrespective of either Alonso or Vettel or Lewis was in a different car. We saw it during the Red Bull era.
Just for reference, by the way, for any Lewis Hamilton fans watching, I'm happy to have the argument if the argument is Lewis compared to Vettel or Alonso would have been much better in that Mercedes. That's a different argument. And to be honest, we don't know that, and that's an argument I'd be willing to have. No, but that's my point. Like that's a different argument. That I'd say maybe Lewis would be better than those guys in that Mercedes. Like, there's arguments to be made for that. There's some diehard Alonso fans who'd say no way, Vettel fans,
I'd
etc.
say no way.
But my point is, saying that Lewis would have been more dominant than those two is a different conversation, and one that realistically I don't have an answer to, but I'd be happy to argue it all day. My point is, to say that they wouldn't be winning those championships without him, I think is bullshit. That's all there is to it. Like
Precisely.
That's the only. How dominant is a different conversation, completely different.
I think the arguments that they make, I think maybe let's touch on that. The arguments that they make is, to an extent which I've read, it's about the length of the dominance from 2014 till 2020. That's 7 years, I think. I think that's the longest period of dominance for any.
They won the constructors in 21 too, so it was eight championships in a row.
Eight championships. That's unprecedented, and this is something that Lewis does get credit for the fact that throughout this period, Mercedes did not fall off to the levels that we saw it in 2022, probably. That is something that he gets credit for, and I'm not sure if it's the right thing or wrong, but that is something he and even Toto Wolff gets the credit for. On the other hand, there is the other side of it where Lewis jumped into the car in 2013, and that car was already a championship runner-up. In 2013, Mercedes was second in the championship, and people forget that. Everyone somehow thinks that Mercedes just jumped out of the blue and started winning championships.
And that's why I kind of dislike the Schumacher comparison, because it's not a fair comparison at all.
It's not.
Like,
because Michael
Schumacher
spent 5 years.
Yes.
He spent 5 years.
Yeah.
Pretty much transforming the entire team from being.
And also,
being
like
shit.
I said, at a time when there was unlimited testing. In 2010, they stopped that. So it's a completely different era. They're not really comparable. And to be honest, like, even now people saying like Lewis is going to Ferrari to help them develop the car. It's like the drivers do help develop the car, but nowhere near as much as they used to. It's not quite the same anymore. So it's just a very different era, you know?
Yeah. And it's around 10, I think it's around 5 to 6%, you can say, of the entire development growth, development chart that actually can be attributed to the driver. And just about it. And honestly, if we are going to talk about drivers throughout the history, and I think Mobile will actually, he'll actually come up with the examples of it. The drivers that actually made the
On the
difference in
spot
terms of
there.
car.
Not a problem. I'm ready.
Hey, it's not. I think Michael did that with Ferrari from 1996 onwards. I think Lauda did it with Ferrari as well, 1970s. I think Alain Prost did it with McLaren. And even I think Lauda also played a role during the Tag Heuer. What was it? It was called McLaren Tag. What was it called?
The Tag Porsches.
Something like
Yeah.
that, right? The Tag Heuer engines. And
Yeah.
these were
well,
the times when
Porsche
you could
engines
say-
with Tag Heuer on them, right?
Yeah.
Is the-
yeah. And these were the times where you could see drivers making the difference in terms of being, first of all, they immersed themselves into the project, and then the project grew with them. You can't really, I honestly can't really attribute Max for Red Bull having this brilliant car right now. Okay, his inputs help, but I won't say that he's the one who has the sole responsibility in helping Red Bull build a grid beater.
I
Similarly
think.
with Lewis, similarly with almost every other driver. Since
Sorry, I
2010.
know I'm cutting in a lot here, but just
Yeah.
I do think there is something to be said for the drivers with development, which still stands today, that I probably should have mentioned because it's a bit facetious not to, which is a really good driver will also allow them to develop the car further. So you could attribute part of that to, say, Lewis, for example, because if we look at Max and Lewis, they both like pointy cars, like really pointy cars. And I think it was the same with Schumacher. It's like they say something like every champion drives that way, I think, or most of them do. But yeah, so the point is, if you don't have a Max in the car, you probably can't continue to push that car to that knife edge because another driver couldn't handle it. And that is something you could credit with Lewis as well, to say like maybe there would be a limit to what they could push if it was Bottas in the car, because it's Bottas.
You can't really push anything with Bottas in the car. So.
He was a reasonably good driver, as is Perez right now.
I think one
Anyhow,
interesting thing to consider with it as well is that I think, if we're going to put Hamilton and Schumacher and Verstappen, we're going to put all this together. Those latter two are very much built around those two drivers. It was Team Schumacher, and we know it's kind of Team Max there right now and goes around that. And Lewis didn't have that when he went in there. You know, Rosberg obviously jumped up a lot further and pushed him a lot harder than I think anyone anticipated that he would. And, you know, such a rivalry like that between two people at the same team, there's an argument there that both of them are kind of contributing towards pushing it forward a lot more, in a way, by rather than just having one person saying, this is what I want the car to be, and putting it as that. Again, you can put that kind of akin to Red Bull now, where it's kind of very much built around Max, and Sergio kind of struggles to get that same kind of feeling from it as well.
Yeah.
By having Hamilton and Rosberg kind of push it so far, it almost kind of left them, you know, if they're pushing, they are so far then in front that when you then lose that Rosberg and you get a Bottas, and instead there's still a sizable gap there, which then Hamilton can kind of jump on and build that kind of atmosphere for himself as well.
Yeah. And that's it perfectly. This is the whole point. It's like the tweet wasn't to say that Hamilton had no input in it. It's just to say that you have to say that the car and the team are the majority when it comes. Like, the majority might be 60%. I'm not saying it's like 90%. I'm just saying that the team and the team and the car is always more important in F1, because it doesn't matter how fucking good you are. If you're driving a Haas, you're not winning a championship. So it's a simple fact of F1, whether you like it or not, you know.
That's why Nico Rosberg does not have a podium.
Oh, can I just one last thing as well, because I think I talked to you about it casual earlier. One of the funniest comments I got as well was that Lewis Hamilton. Can I just state, I love Lewis Hamilton, but his fan base is starting to really irritate me. One of the things that someone said today was, and I got this in a comment, and someone called me naive and a hypocrite because, and I quote, Lewis Hamilton is the reason that money came to the sport. He brought money to the sport. And my reply was simply, you do realize in 2006, Formula One was making more money per event than any other sport in the world and clearing 5 or 6 billion a year, I believe it was, the year before Lewis Hamilton came. So it's like, what are you talking about? So it's just these ridiculous statements. And I will, just for the case of fairness, after Austria as well, I did have so many arguments with Max fans as well, because there are Max fans that are ridiculous like that as well. So it isn't just the Lewis Hamilton fan base. It's like any extreme fan base basically becomes the Al-Qaeda of Twitter the moment anything goes wrong. So, yeah. Anyway, rant over. Got Al-Qaeda in, though.
Yeah.
Hope you like that one. Yeah.
That's another one for the bingo cards. I'm going to put it next to the Trump shooting. There we go.
Yeah.
We should make the blatantly biased racing bingo cards.
Absolutely.
That's too much. We need a
Max
shorter
Mosley,
name.
Nazi. What
Yeah.
else?
Insulting India somehow. There's
let's
definitely
not
a
do
list.
that.
I'll come up with a list. If you want, I'll on windupmerchant.org in like 2 days. This bingo card will be available, guarantee you. So
Let's do that.
alongside my fanboy spinner. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, that sucks, by the way.
I forgot it existed until now, to be honest.
By the way, I actually had one question regarding Nico Rosberg. So, mobile first to you. What do you think happened in 2016? What led to the dynamics changing and Rosberg actually ultimately ending up winning?
Engine fires.
Being German?
I don't think. I mean, I'm going off the top of my head here, so I'm not basing this on any kind of facts on figures or anything like that. Let's not.
We never do.
No, that's fair.
It's not the right place for that.
I don't think we could be under the pretense that there was a completely sudden turnaround, because obviously they were in a title scrap in 2014 as well, and that it looks a little bit bigger than it was because we had the whole silly thing about double points at the finale, and it didn't work out for Rosberg the way. So it looks more. The gap looks bigger than it was in actuality. It actually went all the way down to the season finale. 2015, I don't remember as much, but we can't be under the pretense that Rosberg wasn't still winning races that year and still Hamilton's clearest threat. I think more than anything, maybe it was just, what was that, year 4 of them working together as teammates at that point. I think it was then just figuring out what things he needed to do, recognizing the areas where he needed to improve, understanding that, if he couldn't beat Lewis, then he could settle into second place and kind of manipulate the rest of the field around that as well, which we saw at the tail end of the year, because I think it was the last 5 races he comfortably finished second each time, because that's what he knew he had to do. He could kind of drive within himself and know that's the goal that he had to go for, basically. So I think for him it was just an understanding of, right, we've been playing this game for 2 years now. I understand the rules. I understand how Lewis is going to play it. So this is how I'm going to do it now. And, it worked out perfectly. It's an interesting thought process of what happens if he didn't win in 2016. The consensus being, it certainly was from my end, was that kind of when he won in 2016, it was like, right, I'm going to stop now. Yes, there's this whole thing about, they start racing from such a young age and you're away from home all the time. He wanted to move back. That's totally understandable. But I think there's also an argument that he'd reached the pinnacle there, and he knew kind of deep down he couldn't then replicate that going on. That's what I always felt why he moved away, was because he knew that it was going to be even harder to then do the same again in 2017 and 2018. And he would have comfortably kept on winning races at that point in time, but he might not have had that same edge to trump Hamilton again and again and kind of then establish it as his own team.
It would have been interesting 2017 and 2018 as well, because can you imagine if those two were taking points off each other and Ferrari were in it? Vettel might have had a chance at the
better chance.
Yeah, that's why 2025 is going to be so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to that. By the way, in 2015, Lewis did not lose to Rosberg technically, because the race where he lost the championship, he lost it to Sebastian Vettel. So Rosberg had a pretty bad season in that respect. And I think Vettel also had a pretty good season, because he also kind of played the same game that first 2 positions are occupied, he'll continue having P3s. And then the race where either of them fumbled, he got the win.
In 2016 as well, Lewis did have had a bigger share of the bad luck as well, with mechanical failures and other stuff. I do think that is a fair assessment of the season. Like, if Lewis didn't have those issues and mechanical failures, and I remember there was something with qualifying as well, but it's nearly a decade now. I don't remember exactly, but he had some bad luck that season. So, which is un-Hamilton like. Normally he's very lucky.
Yeah.
But you make your own.
Oh God!
You make your own luck.
That's
not what I meant. You make your own luck. I did. Twitter, shut the fuck up. Let's get off of Hamilton, because otherwise I'm going to be crucified the next time I visit England.
I mean, you'll be crucified on Twitter anyway after. I mean, it's
that's
30
digital.
minutes of Lewis.
Regardless of what people tell you, you can't die just when someone, retweets something bad about you. It doesn't actually work that way. So
let's hope so.
At least I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, someone probably retweeted and something about Donald J.
Oh
Trump.
God.
So, yeah.
Someone said Donald Duck.
Yeah.
That's what the Secret Service shouted at him.
One of the headlines in India was Donald Trump's death. So,
did you see? I know this is off topic on F1, but did you see that Forbes headline? It was like the worst thing. When I saw it, I could not believe that it was Forbes. I genuinely was like, this must be The Onion or something. Like, because they said basically, will Trump, it was something along the lines of, will this now help Trump with black voters because he's been shot at? And I was like,
oh my God.
Is this on Forbes? Like, like, if this had been on Onion or like on some sort of satire site, I'd be like, okay, fair enough. With like a picture of a rapper on the front or something. That's what I was expecting.
That was nonsense.
And then I saw Forbes. I was like, are you joking? So, yeah.
By the way, it took me a while to actually, join the dots. My first reaction was, okay, blacks, why? Maybe because of sympathy. But then I realized, okay, being shot. Oh God.
Yeah. Like I said, if it was any other, I just could not believe when I saw it was Forbes. I was like, what is happening? Like, who cleared that? Who cleared that?
Media is dead, man. And it's related. It's the entire media model where the main customer is, I mean, that, and it's something for another. Anyways, moving on.
We'll do that on our
That's
blatantly
nonsense.
biased media podcast next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, moving on from Lewis Hamilton and everything, I think one topic which probably a few people are quite enraged about, even one of our previous guests, Lawrence, is quite pissed at Carlos Sainz right now. And he's pissed at Carlos Sainz because he's basically being someone who is dragging along multiple teams, telling them, okay, I'll sign today, I'll sign next week, I'll sign next month. And it's been going on for too long. There was already an announcement that was supposed to happen with Williams pre-Barcelona. At least that's what I'd heard from some sources. Apparently something happened and Flavio happened. So it all went to shit.
Beautiful.
Right now, the situation where we are in, again, I'm not entirely sure if it is actually the case or not, but Carlos is waiting it out. He's waiting for Mercedes and Red Bull to make up their mind and hoping if a seat opens up in either of those places. Now, my question is, since he's doing all of this, do you think he's playing a bit of a risky game where he pisses off almost all the teams and might have to sit out next season? Mobile?
It's definitely a real possibility, and it's a little bit silly in a way because yes, there may obviously there is an opening at Mercedes, and it looks that there will be one at Red Bull as well. But the ifs and the buts just to make that kind of all happen are very slim.
A resident Mexican
so
sitting
it's not
right
as if
here.
it's. We'll touch on Red Bull a little bit later on as well. But yeah, it's. I mean, I've from what I've heard, I think Williams are already kind of said, right, we're not going to keep dealing with this because we haven't got the time to keep waiting. And then what happens last minute? Actually, you've decided to go to Alpine or Audi or whatever it is, and we're left in the lurch. We're not going to do that because we've got a business to run, we've got a team to sort out. So let's just get on with that. And that kind of helps a lot of other people as well, because someone like a Valtteri Bottas, who has been linked to that Williams seat, he's going to be more than happy to just sign on the dotted line and not worry about any of the ramifications. He knows he's not the first pick because they've openly courted Carlos. But if they come up to him tomorrow and go, here's a contract, don't worry about the terms and conditions, just sign it and this drive's yours, he's going to take it. Because he knows it's the same situation with whether he wants to go to a Haas or an Audi or whether a Bottas ends up. he's just got to accept the first offer that comes his way because he knows he's not the first pick at any of these kind of places a lot of the time. So jumping back to Carlos there's a real possibility that's going to happen with all these other kind of places as well. I don't know how patient everyone else is going to be with it. Obviously, Audi have kind of made it very clear that he is priority number one, and they have done for a long time now. But at what point do they start saying, well, if you really were, kind of dedicated and involved in our project, you would have signed by now. We wouldn't still be having this guessing game going on.
So sorry, just to butt in. Sorry, Mobile, just to butt in. The Audi deal is off. It's almost 95% done. They're not pursuing him anymore.
Fair enough. Fair.
Jesus.
Yeah. So, well, again, then that is place. Then he's narrowing down his options. It's essentially just Alpine now, which may not be the worst thing in the world. If you were going to sign at the summer break to move to one of those teams, you'd pick Alpine, which is an insane conversation we would have had at the beginning of the year. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know whether he thinks he's going to be too important to miss out on a drive. Carlos Sainz is a very, very good driver. He's one of at the top level of the sport, but he does not have the same kind of sway as if waiting for a Verstappen or something like that as well. And I wonder whether he needs to accept that is his role, essentially.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not the first time in history a Spanish guy leading people on has caused some heartbreak, but, that's why she left me. Anyway, yeah, I don't know if... I don't know if it's a bad idea. Like, I think one of the things Vel said, where he's like, I feel for him, I kind of do agree with, because he's like, if I was in Carlos Sainz's situation, and the reality is I can either sign with Alpine, Williams, or Sauber, or I can hang on, see what opens up, and maybe end up taking a year off. Like, he clearly doesn't want to go to any of those three teams. It's clearly not like a first option for him. And maybe just... Option. No, or third option. I would say it's probably it's not even in his top 10, Alpine, at this stage. But like, I just don't know, because realistically, his best option at the moment, given what's happening with Perez, given that Toto Wolff has immediately fallen into the recency bias trap, gone, we're now a title contending team next year, forget about Antonelli, like just randomly out of the blue. Maybe it is best for him to stick around, because worst case scenario, he doesn't get a drive for next year, and he could probably push his way into like reserve driver somewhere to kind of, which I'm sure he doesn't want, but my point is he could probably battle his way in there, or fight his way into one of the back teams later on or in 2026. Like, I think a year off isn't going to destroy all of his hopes, so maybe hanging on is best, because think about it, if he signs for Williams or Alpine now, right, and then we find out at the end of the year that Antonelli hasn't been signed by Mercedes and they would have taken him, or Red Bull decides that Ricciardo is not going to work out and that they'll be open to the Sainz deal once again. Obviously, that would probably mean Max leaving. But the point is, this year has been crazy as it is, and maybe he's more concerned about losing out on a top team than losing out on a backmarker for a year. Like, if Sainz leaves, the fact that Hülkenberg, Magnussen have come back, I think Sainz can come back after a year. Like, I'm sure.
He can come back. The argument is not of him coming back. The argument of him is getting a place which actually his talent is worthy of as well. I mean, he
none
wants
of those
to be
options are worthy of his talent at the minute.
In terms of, again, front running teams are there. He can't get a seat into that, and at some point you have to understand that, look, the top four teams, the talent that is there, he does not stack up. That's the blunt truth. Ferrari, Lewis, Charles Leclerc, no negotiation. Okay, let's not talk about Red Bull. McLaren, we have Lando and Oscar. Again, they are at a different level right now.
Look, no argument on that. But like, if
you have to be realistic at some point,
but if Mercedes decide that Antonelli can't just come straight in and they work something out for Antonelli to go to Williams, then who else on the grid can Mercedes get that is better than Sainz at the minute? And that's what he's gambling on. Like there
That's
is no one
fine.
else.
But that 1 year,
2 years
can
maybe.
actually. I don't think they'll leave Antonelli out for 2 years.
Maybe
He's
not,
not a
but
bad
even
talent.
even
Even I'm telling you right now, that kid deserves to be in Formula One right now. The kind of
100.
talent
I
he's
agree
shown,
with that. Yeah.
100%, without a doubt. Because if Ollie Behrman deserves to be in Formula One, Antonelli does. He's at his level and maybe even better. Again, people are actually going to be pissed about it. That's the fact. The
Who are
problem,
these people?
idiots. So the problem
Thanks
with
for the
Carlos,
clarification.
right?
In the comments, please type "I'm an idiot" if you agreed with that Antonelli shouldn't be on the grid.
Yeah. Please do that.
Yeah.
Anyways, the problem with Carlos right now is, again, he might get a 1 year deal with Mercedes. He's not getting a 2 year deal. If he gets a 1 year deal
Maybe
with,
not. Yeah, maybe not.
yeah, in that 1 year he has to adapt to the Mercedes and the challenge of George Russell in his home team. He might end up looking worse off than how he's faring at Ferrari right now. Because
I
that
don't
is a
know,
more
man.
stable environment. I'm telling you, that environment is still more.
But look at his adaptation in McLaren. Look at his adaptation against Leclerc at Ferrari in the first year. This is a guy who is famous for
You
adapting
can,
to
yeah.
these cars. So, and the Mercedes is definitely going to be easier to drive than a McLaren, I think, or than
Ask Lewis. Ask Lewis fans how easy
look.
to drive
Lewis,
the car.
yeah, but Lewis is over the hill. He's washed. He's done. We know this. We've talked about this, right? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Leave me alone, Twitter. No, like, but Sainz is very good at
Are you
adapting to
telling
a
me
car.
that Lewis Hamilton is less adaptable than Carlos Sainz? That
I
is
am
what you're
saying that
telling me right
Carlos Sainz is absolutely a better driver than Lewis, and we can see this over his career.
now. Oh God.
I'm joking. Anyway, I love how I'm just going to see the graph on YouTube drop with like the amount of fun. No, like obviously not. But I'm just saying like this. Sainz is probably a better decision for Mercedes for that year or two because. One, maybe they give Antonelli the year in Williams, and maybe it doesn't stack up. Like, you know, moving to F1 is difficult. I disagree with myself. I think it will, but the point is like getting Carlos Sainz in there would give them a strong number two. And I think yes, Russell will probably beat him. I think Russell is just a faster driver at the minute, but that might be what they need for Russell as well to make him officially the number one and not the number one while we train up your successor, which is what it looks like at the
But
moment.
they're doing it
you know?
anyways.
I
They're
know,
doing it
I know.
anyways.
I know,
mean,
but I feel like
that's-
Russell should have at least a year to himself, right? Like he toiled around in
Yeah.
Williams for so long.
Yeah.
Well, they were like, no, Bottas is better for this year. No, Bottas is better for this year. No, Bottas. Are you sure? Like, what's going on here? You know.
yeah,
and then he comes in and they go, yeah, we want Max Verstappen or Antonelli. You're not good enough. Like, Russell's got to be feeling a little bit hurt at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's basically becoming the Daniel Ricciardo of Red Bull of 2016, 17.
Ooh,
where
don't
Max
say that. Jack
kind of-
Villeneuve will be on here.
I But yeah, anyways, coming back to Carlos, I think my worry is, okay, in terms of driver caliber, he's good, but if you're putting a Valtteri Bottas or an Ocon or Gasly, all these drivers in his place, you're not losing out on a lot in those
yeah.
midfield teams. In
Disagree.
those midfield teams.
Disagree.
I don't care. Screw you. I don't think you're missing out on a lot because again, look, Gasly, Ocon, and I probably not Bottas, but these drivers are still pretty formidable, and you can't really. I understand he's performing well. What happened there?
I dropped a coin.
Something broke.
Mobile got really annoyed about your comments.
Yeah.
Just like, oh, screw this.
That's
Protest.
enough of that.
Look, all of these midfield teams. Ideally, what I'd want for Carlos is either he goes to Williams, or Audi's probably not because they're basically doing what Ferrari did, self-imploding by the way, and the third option is Alpine. So probably I would actually expect Carlos to go for a long-term contract with Williams, have those breakout clauses, because I feel at least Williams is a team that is showing some signs of life. And look, if you want to fight for titles or something, in all these teams, you're going to be a number two driver. Be it Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, or Red Bull. You'll be the second driver. In Williams, he can actually be the first driver. And that makes a difference. if he can beat
Yeah.
Albon, by the way.
I just
So
my
that's the
last point
question.
on that though is you need to keep in mind that none of these top team F1 drivers see themselves like Carlos does not see himself as a number 2 to Leclerc, and that's where the mindset comes from, which is Carlos will think if he can get a seat at Mercedes. I think I would like to see him there just because of the other options not being great, but I did say initially when the news broke that Lewis was going there, I initially said I don't think it's a good idea for him to go to Mercedes at a time when they're not challenging at all to just play second fiddle to Russell. I thought it was a terrible idea. Given that Mercedes are picking up, and this time it could still be a false dawn, but it looks a little bit better this time. James Allison isn't looking for silver bullets. He's actually developing the car steadily. So it looks better this time. I started to disagree again with myself, which happens a lot, and thought, you know what, even though he still will be second fiddle, maybe being second fiddle where he can get podiums, the occasional win, and potentially in 2025 things go crazy and he can play mind games with Russell and all of these things, that is better than toddling around in a Williams for trying to get points every weekend, So I agree. If Mercedes wasn't an option, then Williams, I would say, is the best place to go. But with Mercedes being an option,
Mercedes or Carlos approach this thing? I mean, because worst case scenario in 2026, Kimi Antonelli is coming. Worst case scenario. That's a known thing. Carlos knows it. Mercedes know it. How do they approach the whole thing? Do they have a conversation that, okay, you're here for the stopgap period?
He calls up the Germans and says, I was on your side during the war. My ancestors were. Spain was in general. I think it was, right? No, Italy was.
No.
Spain was fascist as well, right?
But it wasn't that... It didn't play that big a role.
No, but it was.
If
It was fascist, wasn't it? If I remember. My history's gone out the window here.
They had a kingdom, right?
Oh, I can't remember. Let's not go down this path. This is ridiculous.
Sorry.
That was a joke. Let's not go into the history of a joke. Anyway.
Anyways, screw that. In terms of Carlos and what step he should take in terms of his future, Mobile, what would you actually want him to do?
I think it's silly to look at Red Bull and Mercedes. No one can disagree that they are better options in terms of competitiveness for next year. The problem is he is not first, second, and in some cases not even third choice to slot in there. And let's say that everything kind of manipulates around and he does get into one of those. We're just going to be having this same conversation this time next year because, like we say, it is a stopgap solution. We spoke about Antonelli. Red Bull have got their own kind of conveyor belt that they want to keep on rotating around as well. So then it's getting to the point of not only the ifs and buts of can I get into there, but then the ifs and buts of is Max or is George going to move on from those and I can make them my own. And I think the percentage probability of all that is very low indeed. Which then leaves unfortunately he's left with a project essentially, and he doesn't want a project, but that's what he's got. And so if he wants to be a Formula One driver, that's kind of the thing that he's going to have to take on now. If he doesn't want that, then there's no point in him being on the grid because that's the options that are available to him. That's what he's going to have. Of those three, you would say that probably, and I'm a Williams fan, I would love to have him there, but I think Alpine is a better option for him because I think at this moment in time they are
an insane sentence.
I know, but in terms of a starting
I did
point,
not expect that.
No, but the thing is, Audi is
I agree,
Audi is the
it's
biggest
insane.
project of all. They are so far back from where they need to be, and they're not going to be anywhere near the front when it comes to 2026. It's going to take a long time from that point onwards to get there. So it's going to be a long old wait for it to kind of blossom into what he wants it to be. Williams are good, but, and again, this is coming from a Williams fan, there's not a base there where it's going to then move forward even further. This isn't going to replicate what McLaren have been doing. Williams are, again, still quite far back and they are rebuilding and it's getting better, but it's still a long way away from what they want it to be. And I'm not saying that then therefore out of those three options, Alpine is then going to go on and win the World Championship in the future, but they have more previous of it. And in terms of if you're jumping in at a more competitive point, they are higher up than where Williams are now. And if
Yeah.
What does happen is what we're expecting is that they are getting Mercedes powertrains in the future. They're moving away from the Renault supply. Again, if you're choosing between two Mercedes teams at that point, and you're banking on the new regulations making Mercedes get it all right again, and they vault up the order, like I say, Alpine is just further up right now, so it's just a more logical conclusion.
Yeah.
One thing about Alpine as well, I think that probably helps is, I know that ironically they're looking up because they're not going to be a works team anymore. It's the irony of it. But I do think there is something to be said for Alpine, that there's not that stigma that, like, for example, if you go to Sauber, you're hoping that Audi works out, right? Like, you're really betting that that's going to work. If you go to Alpine, that could either be, we'll see how 2026 goes, and it kind of becomes a stopgap that could work out well, right? I think the only downside to Williams is that I think if he goes to Williams, it's consigning yourself to, I'm not going back to a top team. And I don't mean that as an insult to Williams. It's just generally Williams is the place where you go when things haven't worked out, or when your junior career is kicking off and you're being tested to go up. You know, like when you come back into a Haas, Hulkenberg's completely ruined this on me, but generally you come back into a Haas, it's like the last of your career or the end of your rookie career for most rookies. But you know what I mean? Like, there are certain teams where the stigma is kind of like, that's where you're going to either end your career or to start your career. It's not really a place where you're kind of building up again. Like, look at Bottas. Bottas has gone to Sauber, probably going to end up at Williams if all things go normally, which they're not. So I think maybe that's why Sainz is pushing it off for so long. It's kind of, he knows that as soon as he commits to any team except a top team, he's kind of committed himself out of that, unless something crazy happens. You know, there's not really any way back from there, you know?
I don't think there's any way back for him either way right now.
It's just because, like, if you're a world champion,
Behrman
there's
is coming
always a
in.
route, right?
Yeah. That's
But
the thing.
if you're
as well.
not, then it's you fade away. Unless Ricardo, unless you're Ricardo and Horner really fancies you on many different strange levels. But I'm sure we'll talk about that in a few.
Yeah.
They have a WhatsApp message thing, I think.
There's probably one thing. One of them. A finger or
They
two.
send finger pics, yeah.
Yeah. I'll never understand what that meant. I why that was sent. Anyways, that's a topic for a different day. Just what do you expect? Where do you think Carlos ultimately ends up? If you had to make a pick, is it going to be Alpine? Is that what you're going for?
If me or Mobile or both.
Either, both of you.
Well,
Just final. Where do you think he'll end up? Where you want him to is a different thing.
I
Where do you
think
he
Toto
ends up?
Wolff will make a mistake and he'll end up at Mercedes for 2025 for 1 year at least. I think Toto should jump Antonelli in now and stress test him now at the top team. I don't think there's any need for him to go to Williams, because realistically, Mercedes isn't like the top team at the minute, so it's the perfect time to kind of throw him in the deep end and see what happens.
This is on a two race win streak. It's not a top.
Yeah, but to quote Jake Boxall Leg when he was talking about Max Verstappen, they were handed those wins. So I'm just really on a mood of winding up the Hamilton fan base this week. Sorry. Yes, they're on a 2-win streak, but my point is, until they're in that position every single weekend, it's still not quite like the championship team it was before. So, but my final word is, I think he ends up at Mercedes somehow. This year has gone mad enough. I think that'll shake out that way.
Yeah. Mobile?
I'm going to say something that will not be on a blatantly biased bingo, which is I agree with Jason.
Oh, God.
In the terms of that, I think Antonelli has to go in that Mercedes next year, because, and this is, I've thought this for a while now, but I think it's the perfect time. But if you're ever going to chuck a 17-year-old into an upper-end Formula One team, then this is the best time to do it, because yes, they're on a race-winning streak now, but it's not anticipated that they're going to be on a championship challenge. So it's a perfect little spot wherein you can get into the car, get some mileage, you will be competitive enough to circulate around in the points pretty much every weekend, and then anything thereafter that is a bonus. There's no expectation on him that he should be a podium finisher, a race winner. in his first year, regardless of what Russell is doing at the car, because we all understand it's a learning process, and he is a project in of himself. We won't be able to judge it until 2-3 years down the line, and we can start to see what's coming from that. But no, I think he has to go there. And so, yeah, I think of all the options that he's got available to him, Alpine is the best one. But
Still can't believe
I know, but so does that mean that's where he's going to go? It's so hard to say. I mean, we had this
sending
conversation.
someone to Alpine actually breaks my heart.
Yeah, we had the conversation on Twitter recently of trying to figure out where everyone's going in this silly season. And there's still like a couple of seats on there where you're thinking, who on earth is kind of fitting in there? And if Carlos doesn't go to Alpine and does take a year off, then that again throws the whole thing into kilter.
Who the fuck goes to Alpine? Yeah, in that situation,
Doohan.
like
Yeah, well, Doohan seems to
Jack
be
Doohan
kind of,
maybe, yeah.
he's waiting to see whether Carlos gets that or not. The other thing that may happen is if a lot of people are anticipating happen is Perez moving out of Red Bull. That's going to throw another huge spanner into the works as well, because while he's not always
He'll
had the
go to
best of
Audi.
times of it, but yeah, he would be a welcome addition for any midfield team. I would welcome him at Williams with open arms because I know what a good midfield operator he is. You know,
Plus, he brings a wealth of knowledge.
exactly that as well. And you know, for so many of those teams roll cash, and for so many teams who are having to roll the dice on wacky tyre strategies just to try and get into the points, again, he's that perfect kind of role for those people, and it may work better for him because it's a less pressure environment. But we're getting away from kind of what Carlos is going to do. But yeah, the best option to him is Alpine, but I don't know whether that's what he's going to pick. I can see him taking a sabbatical, but then it's going to be very tricky to get back onto that roundabout again where he wants to go.
Yeah, just something for our viewers and listeners, by the way. If you like Mobile Chicane, find yourself agreeing with me, please do book yourself for a mental health check.
By the way, you know, while Mobile was talking, I actually came up with the title of the podcast.
Oh,
here we go.
Lewis
You don't even
Hamilton
know
was...
the name of the podcast. How are you going to come up with a title?
Oh, this episode, by the way. So it is Lewis Hamilton was handed the titles by Mercedes.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I mean, if we are triggering the,
It's going to be a fine lynching
army, we should really go all out. I mean, anyways, we've talked enough about Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton, Carlos.
Are we going to talk
Finally,
about Perez? Are we?
No, we're not talking about Perez. We're talking about Red Bull right now, because I actually came across.
So thanks for that. So we're not talking about Perez because we're talking about Red Bull.
Yeah. I mean, we know Checo is already screwed. By the summer break, I think he's out. So, anyways, we'll not stress too much on him. The thing is, I actually came across the race podcast where they actually talked about this thing, that is it a case that Red Bull right now is actually on the verge of dropping off in terms of where they were in terms of performance overall, but throughout the start of the season things have been a bit shaky. You've seen already, I mean, it's still quite obvious that between Helmut Marko and Christian Horner there are tensions are still there. You see some snarky comment here and there from Marko, which is actually aimed at Horner. Then again, Jos Verstappen comes in, kicks a lot of shit, and then comes up and says that the team is too toxic every time he makes the thing toxic. And even Adrian Newey has left. The competition has caught up. The future is slightly uncertain because in 2026 they are building their own power unit. You add all these things up, and then you have this slight, I don't know if it's slight or if it's significant, uncertainty of Max Verstappen leaving for Mercedes. Is Red Bull actually at a... First of all, is the team too dependent on Max Verstappen right now? Has it made itself too dependent on it? And secondly, is it on the verge of actually dropping off a cliff in terms of performance, and then from being a top team falling down the pecking order? So
Well, first of all,
okay, sorry, Jesse, go for it.
I was just going to say, first of all, I can see why you didn't get that job in the fucking marketing department anyway. Very optimistic.
I actually have to ask which one.
No, I was joking. Say, like, you know, I can see why Red Bull wouldn't hire you for marketing. That was a pessimistic rant there. I guess since I butt in, I should probably... I'll
Yeah,
go
yeah,
first,
go
if
for
that's
it.
okay, Mobile.
Yeah, I'll deem it okay this time.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And I'll stay out with it. Like, this is the thing. This is one thing I think I said in the last podcast with the three of us on it, which is like Adrian Newey, for example, going isn't... And then their form dropping off isn't actually correlated, but the external pressure and the external view will be that, which will then put internal pressure on, because that external pressure isn't just from people like us. It's also from non-F1 executives on the board in Austria or on the board in Thailand who don't quite understand F1, but all they hear is morons like me saying, well, Newey left and now the fucking car's gone down the drain, so it must be because Newey left and Horner. So this all does add up as a mounting pressure on Horner. The car form itself, I think this was expected from the start. Newey, ironically, ironically is the wrong word, but when you look back now at the start of the year, it does kind of look like Newey went, well, that's as good as that car gets. I'm fucking out of here. Because he literally said at the start of the season, we are basically now at the limit that we can go with these regulations, and there's not going to be huge jumps anymore. And then was like, right, I'm quitting, by the way. And now all of a sudden the other teams have caught up, and Pierre Vacher is like, now it looks like it's our fault. Thanks for that. Like, brilliant. I don't think the team's falling apart. I just think they've hit the top of these regulations. And unfortunately, in order for Red Bull to be the fastest, because it still is the fastest car, it needs to be on an absolute perfect setup window, which is impossible at every track. And the only person who can drive it that way at the moment is Max Verstappen, which is why they need someone like a Sainz or maybe a Ricciardo, which won't work out, but that's their argument. I don't know if they're fucked. I just think it's going to look more and more difficult for them over the next year, because the limits of these regulations have put them in a really difficult corner, and the development path has been specifically towards Max Verstappen's driving style. So it's now on a knife edge for Max Verstappen, which means no one else can drive it, which means, yeah, they're kind of fucked.
Precisely.
They'll win this championship, but I'm not sure how next year is going to go. And it'll be Pierre Vacher's fault for some reason, even though it's not. Yeah.
Are they to rely on Max Verstappen? 100% yes. Are they absolutely fucked? 100% yes. I think. The issue that Red Bull have is that they don't have a plan B a lot of the time, and we've seen this multiple times in the past. And admittedly, it's mostly related to drivers, but you can only look at when Vettel went, when Ricciardo went. It was all quite sudden, and it wasn't according to the Red Bull plan, and they just immediately were like, shit, I don't know what we're meant to do, and they kind of jumbled around. We had, Daniel Kvyat jumping into the main team. And it's almost nonsensical that that's how it should work, because logistically, it's almost kind of the perfect operation you could have for a Formula One team, in terms of it is so well funded. They'll never have any kind of issues with payments and sponsors and all that sort of stuff as well. They are the fastest team in the paddock right now, and not only that, but they're the only team that have their whole separate second team as well, whether you want to call it a junior or a sister operation, whatever you want to call it. And they have this whole Red Bull conveyor belt of talent as well. And so it should all logistically make sense, where the best people, then they get into that V-carb, and then that V-carb, it all goes really well there, and then they move into the Red Bull, and they have loads of success there, and it just keeps churning round and around and around and around. And it doesn't necessarily always do that. And when it doesn't do that, that's when they hit a roadblock and they don't know what to do after that. You've only got to look at this year as well, where, the plan was clearly in place that Perez is probably going to struggle again, but it's okay because we've got Ricciardo back, and he's going to do really amazing in V-carb, and then we're going to put him back in the Red Bull, and then Lawson can go in there, and it's all just going to keep churning round and round and round. And then that's not happened, and they are in this kind of panic implosion now of kind of, right, now what do we do? Like, what's the plan now? The fact that we are having a conversation about Sergio Perez leaving the team at the summer break, when there is not necessarily
a month after giving him a 2-year contract.
Yeah, exactly a month after that as well. When there's not a logical there's not a clear-cut replacement there. This would be a very different story if this was happening and you had Vettel Mark II, Verstappen Mark II at the V Carb right now, and they were tearing it up every weekend and doing amazing things, and it was a question of when, not if, they move up to the sister team. But in the situation now where it's kind of like, oh yeah, we can put Liam Lawson in the car, who is a very good driver, but next Max Verstappen, he is not. And this, in a way, has kind of become the problem with not just the Red Bull program, but also a lot of other younger talents getting promoted into F1 as well. We've seen a little bit of a dearth of it recently.
Yeah.
You know, it's great that we're seeing Behrman and potentially Antonelli next year as well. But the problem we're having a lot of the time is that everybody's looking for the next world champion now. It's no longer good enough if you are going to be a competent driver and you're going to score a brace of points and podiums and that as well. You need to be good enough where people think you are going to take them, or at least be sold off for glory kind of purposes as well. And so Red Bull don't have that in place. What they have is this conveyor belt of all these people that Helmut Marko deems is going to be this next world champion for them. Whereas what they kind of need is they need a sort of subsect of that as well, of people who are going to be that subservient kind of supporting role as well, who they kind of say, right, this person's going to be our number one, and one of these people is then going to be the number two as well. You know, I think they spoke about it on the race podcast as well, and they put it very well, where they were sort of saying they're finding all kind of the lead actors, but they haven't got any of the supporting cast.
Supporting cast, yeah.
And that's such a good way of putting it.
Yeah, I saw this.
Yeah.
I think the problem as well is, if you look back, the real key problem was, was it 2020 or 2021 when it became AlphaTauri? It was 2021, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, that sounds right.
2021, where Gasly
So it
won.
was like-
No, it was 2020, sorry.
Yes,
Gasly
it
won
was,
the
Gasly
race
won in
in
Italy, and that was in the AlphaTauri, yeah.
Okay, right. So I think the key, you're right, actually, because Perez joined in 2021 then, so that timeline adds up, I think the key problem was in 2020 or 2019, whenever that decision was being made, they basically said, we no longer, and it seems like there was some sort of pressure there to stop it being a junior team, and it started becoming the quote-unquote sister team. And then you basically have upset the whole advantage of having that second team there, because the whole point was that was a proving ground for young drivers. And as soon as it became the sister team, it started to become a place where they wanted stability more than just a young driver kind of churn. And now they've got themselves in this position, because Yuki Tsunoda went in there. Realistically, Yuki was kind of lucky to stay past year 1 and 2, because he did have a lot of issues. But now we've got a really good driver there. And if that was still the junior team, you would have expected that the basic choice was he's either moving to Red Bull or he's out. Whereas right now it's like, no, we'll keep him for another year, knowing that we're never moving him to Red Bull because Honda's paying for him, and we need to keep this sister team funded. And then Ricciardo going there and Nick de Vries going there doesn't make sense either. You know, so they've basically ruined the whole point of having that second team, because by the sounds of it, some Austrians got worried about an accounting board and were like, this is just a waste of money, it's not making money back. But the whole point of it, while Dietrich was alive, and I know that all happened before he died, but Dietrich's original point was to use that as a proving ground. And as soon as it stopped being that, then it kind of started those issues. And I think the other issue as well is Helmut Marko hasn't been great over the past 6-7 years at picking young drivers.
We haven't had even a single one.
No,
right?
it's
Who
been like very
has
scattershot.
turned heads. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's missed out on Piastri, for example. Like he actually
He missed
turned
out
down
on-
Piastri.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it was the problem that I see right now is that it's not only the fact that there are. First of all, I think the biggest logjam happened when Honda forced Yuki Tsunoda on Red Bull. That's what happened in 2021. Yuki was promoted. Ideally, he should not have been promoted because he was a bit immature at that stage. He only had 1 year in Formula 2, and you could see that every year why he was kept in the team was because of Honda. What that did was they had to change the strategy for a while, and throughout all of this, the biggest problem for Red Bull has been I've not seen even a single Red Bull junior, catch my eye in any which way. You've seen Oscar Piastri win. He was with Alpine. Dragovic won. He was independent, and then you've had, I think Teo Poche won last season. He was with Sauber. This time around again you have Isaac Hadjar, who's actually leading the championship. He is Red Bull backed, but he's not as highly rated as maybe a few others on the grid. And this is something that makes me worry because, again, there are two drivers that are actually a bit rated right now. Pepe Marti, he is in Formula 2. Second is Arvid Lindblad, he's a 16-year-old in Formula 3 right now. And Helmut Marko is already talking, he's already bigging him up in the sense that he said that since now we can have drivers debuting in Formula 1 at 17 years of age, they might promote him straight from Formula 3 to RB. Maybe it might happen because I think he's leading the championship right now as well.
Helmut Marko doesn't make decisions anymore, though.
Yeah, again,
Horner's
keeping that
basically
aside
blocked that door. Yeah.
Yeah, again, that's also another issue. But what I see is, since there is no driver that is actually coming up, Red Bull has found itself in a situation where there's who are they going to place alongside Sergio Perez is something they should have already discussed at the start of the season.
Yes.
Not
Yes.
right now. Because honestly, they had options. They could have gone with, if at the start of the season they went with Nico Hulkenberg, it made sense. Replacing him, now he's in contract, if they relentlessly push for it, maybe they might get him, but it does not make financial sense. Similarly, maybe they could actually start having chats with Mark Webber and maybe try to bring Oscar Piastri on board for a long term. But they have to start taking steps now, which they haven't done I think since 2019 they've really taken a step back. Since Max really usurped as a team leader, they've really taken a step back in terms of driver development and stuff like this. And it's now really starting to, bite back. Coming back to the question, is the team too reliant on Max Verstappen? I think Mobile will actually understand this correlation. Honda has their own MotoGP team in bike racing and stuff. They have Marc Marquez, who is basically, you can say, who's the Lewis Hamilton of MotoGP. So
Is he
what
washed as
happened?
well?
I think,
No.
yeah, yeah. He's also moving to Italian team. And the thing is, Honda built a bike that was very specific to Marc Marquez. Marc Marquez is basically, he's an alien. You can just say that he can ride any bike and he'll be the fastest. That was the kind of talent that he is. And the problem that has happened is Honda being a very successful team since 2 to 3 decades, it has won a lot. With Marquez, it won for I think 6 to 7 years, something like this, right? Mobile? I think something they went on. Yeah, since 2013 they started winning, and until 2020 they won everything except one title which Lorenzo won. So what has happened is throughout this time the team became too dependent on Marquez. Then Marquez got injured, and since he's been injured again, he's been in and out of the sport. What that has done is it has exposed Honda because no other talent can ride that bike, and the team does not know how to build a bike that is more rider friendly. And right now Honda, which used to be the leader, it is actually at the bottom. And Red Bull is somewhere on those lines because again we talk about Carlos Sainz being a more adaptable driver than Lewis Hamilton. But the but the point is that in 2022, when Ferrari built a more pointy car where Leclerc was able to dominate in the first 4 5 races, he won a couple of them. Carlos was nowhere. He crashed out in a couple of them. He struggled a lot in adapting to those cars. So I'm not sure if there are drivers that can actually drive that Red Bull, and that is the main problem that Red Bull faces. Trying to appease a driver has basically cornered them into a situation where if tomorrow Max Verstappen packs up and leaves for Mercedes for 2025, they don't have a driver that can, first of all, they don't have a driver anyways, a top driver that can actually replace him. Secondly, if there is someone that actually comes in, can he actually drive the car? That's a massive problem for them right now. It's basically existential right now because if something happens, if Max leaves, they are going to, at least for a couple of years, Red Bull is going nowhere. They are not fighting for the title at all. No driver can do that.
I have a question for both of you then. So, let's say two questions. One is, no, we'll talk about Perez afterwards. I was going to say, do you think Perez actually survives the summer break? Because I don't think so anymore. But the second question, a more important question, is we see these cycles all the time of teams dominating, then losing, and especially in modern F1, it's just been that way the whole time. Like, we think 2000, we had only that brief period from 2007, 8. No, well, even then it was
7 to 9.
Yeah. Well, even then it was McLaren for 2 years, right? No, sorry, Kimi. Never mind. Yeah, 7 to 9. Anyway, getting off topic. The point is, we see the teams kind of go cyclical, where Ferrari, for example, won the early 2000s and then kind of have been nowhere bar 2007, 2008, where, whatever. Red Bull went dominant for 4 years and then fell off for 8, basically 7 years. Now they're back to dominance again. It looks like, the way I'm seeing it is, Red Bull is going to kind of drop off. They might win 25, but then I don't think they're going to be that, dominant team in 26, right? So they drop off. Mercedes dropped off in 2022. They're building back. The last time Red Bull dropped off, the key to them still being this force that we knew would come back was Horner kind of kept everyone together. So Newey didn't leave. The technical team as such kind of stayed the same. And they carried that the whole way through until this year, basically.
Okay, just to button. What if there's a scenario where Max leaves? At the same moment, Charles Leclerc is signed with Red Bull. How do you see the trajectory going? Because
Won't
I
happen,
think on the
first of all.
entire grid, I think if there is one driver that can actually handle that car, that Pontiac, it might be Leclerc.
I just think, my personal opinion on that really quick is just, that could work. Like, I think Leclerc could handle that car. And I do agree that, like, similar kind of pointy driving styles as well, and knife edge driving styles. Leclerc's gotten used to having a very knifey Ferrari for a while, up until kind of midway through last year. It won't happen though, for one reason, which is, I think if Max leaves, you're going to have a similar feeling between Max, like we had about, and more so actually, like we had about Lewis earlier this year, because when Lewis left, it did leave a lot of questions around what's going on at Mercedes. And I think now it's kind of panned out. We've seen that it's more, Lewis wasn't getting offered the contract. There's more to it. There was more nuance than just Mercedes is terrible, I'm out of here. But it immediately made us all think something's wrong at Mercedes, right? If Max leaves Red Bull, I don't think another top driver who has a top seat at one of those top 4 teams, say, is going to quickly jump in there, because they're going to think the same thing immediately. Like a Sainz or a number 2, sure. An Alonso who's not anywhere near the front at the minute, sure. Those kind of drivers.
I completely forgot about Alonso.
That's because Alonso's waiting for 2026 to win a championship. But yeah, like, it's going to... I don't think Leclerc goes there for that reason. I know that's not really your question, but I couldn't see Leclerc going, I'll jump in the Red Bull, because clearly everything's fine there. Max just left,
I mean, Ferrari, look, compared to Ferrari, my only worry is whenever I talk about Ferrari drivers, I always question the resolve. By the time Seb left Ferrari, he was, his soul was
He was
crushed.
dead inside.
Yeah, he almost
He was
needed,
trying to save bees.
Yeah,
Like-
Ferrari changes people, that's what it does.
He
And
literally started talking about sustainability because, he couldn't plan one day to the other without getting stressed and anxious and having
Yeah.
panic attacks.
And I just wonder how long Leclerc can actually survive at Ferrari and in this kind of nonsense. I mean, anyways, that's an entirely different topic. But what I worry about Red Bull right now is that I think maybe Christian Horner has taken the eye off the ball. There has been too much stress on what Max wants or things like that. Ideally, if Red Bull gets back to its very aggressive approach that it used to have, pretty much the team was very ruthless throughout the 2010s, early 2009, 2008, where drivers, again, they were picked on potential, but if they didn't perform, they perished. They didn't really stick around for too long. Plus, there was a bit of a conveyor belt when Daniel Ricciardo was brought in. Unless and until Horner gets back to that aggressive approach where either they start grooming Arvid Lindblad as the next guy. I keep saying that because
No, sorry,
apparently-
you said Horner needs to be aggressive, and then you said the word grooming, and I don't think any of this is helping his
Oh
case.
God.
But anyway,
Oh God. And then I talked about a teenager.
You put your yeah, you got your finger on the pulse there. Anyway,
Yeah. Oh, what was I even talking about?
oh, sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
Uh,
Um,
so getting him promoted, and maybe, try to mold the team around this new kid. If there is no one else that is actually going to come on board, and in that scenario, I think Carlos Sainz makes sense having him in the team. Because again, whatever pain in the ass he can be with his comments in the media, at least he has a great track record in terms of developing teams, getting them, basically being a very strong team player on those aspects. But the thing is, Red Bull needs to recognize that there is actually a problem. Because every time what Jos Verstappen has done if he's not done it already, he'll do it throughout the summer break. Is he'll keep talking about the fact that in the last four races, Mercedes has won two, and they've scored two pole positions. That's twice as many victories that Mercedes has had in the last 30 months. So that team is basically growing. Maybe he sees some success there, and again,
well, they
Jos
could have a
hates
Ferrari for the
Horner.
next 4 races now. You know.
I mean, that's it's until and unless he's there and he's pretty much pinging Max's head with maybe we can go to Mercedes. Toto is offering this much money. He's Austrian. It's no connection at all. But the point is, there has to be a point where Red Bull needs to get its house in order. It is not in order, and you can see things starting to fall apart slowly. Maybe not this season, maybe next season. Because I don't,
Well,
and at least for now, I
next
don't see
season is going
Max
to be
staying for
so
long.
much. Well,
Yeah.
next season we're going to see them just under enormous pressure again because realistically, you're going to have McLaren there at the very least. It looks more and more now like Mercedes could be there as well. I'm not going to say Ferrari because every time Ferrari does well, it fucking falls off a cliff. So which is why I did a recent video where it basically said, look, I'm worried now that Lewis Hamilton is going to seriously regret moving there because, like, it's
Who
just
doesn't?
basically, yes, that was my entire point was like, it's not going to go well because
Prost, Alonso, Vettel, Leclerc.
it's perfectly just what worries me about Ferrari is not the fact that they've had 4 bad races now. It's the reaction behind that worries me because
It's the fact.
a
It's the
season
fact
and a
that they've had
half.
5 bad decades, except the one decade when Michael Schumacher was part of.
But it's like a season and a half of things slowly building to that crescendo of Monaco being really just incredible for Ferrari. And then, 4 bad races and Elkin's like, well, Fred's not doing a good enough job. Oh, no, I'm not saying he'll be replaced. I'm like, isn't that what you said about every other team principal before replacing
Yeah.
them? So it just, I don't know. I worry that Ferrari basically likes to impale itself it's very Italian. And I don't think it'll go well I'm starting to think it's going to be a horrible moment when Lewis gets there, is trying to adapt to everything, and Russell is fighting Hamilton for a championship or something. And it'll just be like, oh dear God, what the fuck have I done?
That's what's going. That's actually
because-
you can envision the entire thing actually happening.
But the thing I said was, if he's going there for a paycheck and to win some races with Ferrari and Red, that would be one thing. But Hamilton has been very, very clear that he wants to stick around to try and fight for an 8th. And I just wonder what.
Good luck doing that.
I just wonder what he's seen since 2008 that thinks Ferrari is the place to go for a title. Like,
I think I think it was a desperation move for him because honestly,
well, he didn't. He
whatever
couldn't stay at
saw-
Mercedes, right? They
Yeah.
were offering that was gone anyway.
Yeah.
He could have stayed there and seen how it went and hoped that in that 2-year phase. But I think he knew those days. Like he couldn't get a 3-year contract like he wanted. So, and also they got rid of the ambassadorship. They weren't offering as much money. There was a lot of
Again, none of these things are reported, by the way. I actually went through and dug the entire thing. None of this bullshit is reported that he was not offered the ambassadorship, anything like that. It's entirely
well, I've
none
been
of this-
told by all of Team LH and his fans, so I'm taking them at face value. They would never lie, ever.
That's the thing. It's none of this is actually reported, by the way. I tried to take a look. You've heard about Kimi Raikkonen being screwed by Ferrari in 2008. this is similar to that. It's entirely conspiratorial stories, and I really don't see where it has actually been there.
Yeah, there wasn't much going on in 2008 or 2009 for them to report on, though, was there? I just noticed as well, we're an hour and a half in. We should probably get on to Hungary, otherwise
That's what I was going to say.
otherwise mobile's going to be going, this was fun the first time, but I'm sick of these fucking idiots now.
Yeah.
So let's get on to Hungary, shall we?
Yeah. By the way, Hungarian Grand Prix, I mean, again, my favorite question. Your most memorable moment?
Hamilton at the lights in 2021. How funny was that? Oh, what a
His
race.
eyes through the helmet. Yeah, his. I mean, actually, for me as well, the 2006 Hungarian Grand Prix, but not for this season. It was more for the heartbreak, cause if Michael had been if he had acted his age and been a bit smarter and let Heidfeld go, he would have scored, I think, 5 or 6 points, 4 or 5 points, something like that, and it might have compensated for this bloody DNF that he had in Suzuka at the end of the season. Might have changed the dynamics of the championship. So, I mean, at that point in time, I thought it was. I hated Heidfeld for the kind of move that was there, but again, it was not his fault at all. But, when you sit back and look at it, maybe Michael could have been a bit more smarter and, allowed Heidfeld to go and just bang the points. But that was not Michael. He never was that.
Like, there'll be a lot of angry Verstappen fans going, oh, just like in Austria, yeah? You should have just let Norris by. Is that what you're telling me? I'm sure if you asked Schumacher, he probably would have said the same thing Max said. Well, I could have stayed at home as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, he did. He did, by the way. I remember watching it. It was on ESPNstar.com at the time. He specifically said, I'm not here to give away points.
Yeah.
I mean, that's Michael. That has always been Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, coming to this weekend. By the way, talking about the form guide, the biggest surprise, by the way, the last 2 times we've been at the Hungarian Grand Prix, in the ground effect era, a Mercedes has been on pole. So this is apparently their happy hunting ground, and they're coming here after a front row lockout. How do you expect the weekend to go in terms of the pecking order? So we talk about the top 4 teams, the top 4 front runners. How do you see them stacking up? For fuck's sakes, man.
I would absolutely agree with Mobile Chicane that I think an F1 driver will definitely win the Formula One Grand Prix.
Yeah. I mean,
and likewise, one of the teams will perform better than the other teams. I think we can all agree on those points.
Jesus Christ. the man went
but
on for 10 to 15 minutes and then said,
first of all, it was like 3 minutes max. I don't know what kind of crazy Indian time you're on. But no, good points, well made. You know what? Do you want another ambiguous answer from my side then, or? Yeah,
go
cool.
for it.
20 minutes, cool. No, this is harder to pick mainly as well because I would have said in any other year that this would be a one where we'd expect Ferrari to be back, but Hungary's not really like Monaco-esque anymore. Like the cars can travel through it a lot faster. It's not really. We used to think it was like kind of. What do they say? Monaco without the barriers for
Monaco
years.
Without walls, yeah.
Yeah. So like, it's just not really the case anymore. Because if that was the case, I would have said, I think we're going to see another kind of Ferrari fest. But I think Ferrari is going to struggle at this one again, just because from what I'm seeing in their car over the last 3 races, I don't expect Hungary to be much better.
Yeah.
If you want an actual pecking order, I'm going to say that one of the teams will be first. Then you'll have another team behind them. No, I think Mercedes will do better in qualifying here, but I'm not sure how they're going to do over race pace. I'm going to say that they're going to be probably the 3rd fastest team. I do think it'll be Red Bull and McLaren at the front for this one, personally.
Okay, tell me something. How do you guys think...
I don't know is the answer.
Yeah, okay. Okay, tell me, how do you think Red Bull tackles the curbs?
Oh,
Yeah, that's the biggest issue. I was actually I was playing F1 2017 or something, and on Hungary only today.
you should get a
And
newer
then I
game.
sorry.
You should get a newer game.
Yeah, I'm old fashioned. I mean, it was just lying around, so I just plugged it on. The thing was, I realized, okay, the curbs are quite heavy in Hungaroring, and I had not realized it earlier, but especially
Especially through
the
the chicane, right? Like,
precisely, and Ferrari is brilliant over those curbs, and Red Bull is poor.
and McLaren is very, very good all round as well. So this
Yeah,
could be, in that
that's the
respect, it could
yeah.
be another Monaco where it's in that respect it could be another Monaco, right? But I think just given the track characteristics, I still think like McLaren have the edge on Ferrari. So if Red Bull are out,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's
I don't expect Ferrari
which
to win
means
in any which
which
way.
means that Mercedes are going to win, right?
Wow, 3 out of 3.
I'll tell you why. Because if it's McLaren and Ferrari being the fastest, and Red Bull really struggles, that means that Perez will be in 20th looking for a new contract on the sidelines, while Max is complaining about the curbs. And then, as we expect Leclerc or Norris to win, it'll be completely dry, and both of them will be put onto inters, and it'll be Lewis versus Russell.
Yeah, and
If
we
that
already
plays
seen how
out,
that happens.
clip this. If that plays
Yeah,
out.
we'll do that. I think I have something similar in mind. I think
Yeah, like Spain is
yeah,
down to the launch, right? Just if he had got the launch right in Spain,
Canada,
would have won that.
Spain.
Well, Canada
What
was
was the next
reverse
one?
Miami safety car, so they should have like if they got that right, they would have won there. Spain is the launch. Like there's a few different things, but if you go right back to the start, if the launch was right, he would have won that race. They fucked up in the pit stops as well. There was a few other things, but then you've got Austria, where if Max had
Everything
just
went
gone
wrong.
home, then Norris could have won. And then obviously in Silverstone, they should have won that because everyone, everyone watching, said,
Yeah.
"Hey, you guys have that spare set of mediums. You should chuck those on. They'd be very, very good." Oh, Lando, what do you want? Do you want to win or do you want to fight Verstappen? I
Yeah,
want to
what
win.
was
Right, put on the
that?
softs. Like, what's going on? So McLaren probably should win this weekend. I just don't want to pick that anymore because they keep throwing pie in my face. And
Yeah.
Ferrari should have won a couple of races, but I don't want to say that because they've fucking hurt me since 2008. So it's either going to be Red Bull or it's going to be Mercedes somehow.
Yeah. I fear Red Bull will struggle here. Actually, we've not even seen how Mercedes will fare on a slow speed track. Right? Since Canada, they've been on this form, but most of the tracks have been fast speed. Be it Canada, because Monaco is something that comes in terms of a very close resemblance to Hungary. Other than that, I don't think Barcelona or Canada or even Austria or even Silverstone, they're all very fast speed tracks in terms of you
Yeah.
need. I mean, in all of them, the average pace is very high. In Hungary, it will go down to a certain extent, and mechanical grip comes into picture. How Mercedes fares in these kind of conditions, we haven't really seen that yet. So again, there is still a question mark. I think the bottom line is these 4 teams. I'd rather say these 3 teams and then Ferrari. It might come down to. I think it might come down to execution.
Yeah.
Ideally, I think McLaren will be on top. I feel Mercedes is
Alonso's going
second,
to win
and
this
then Ferrari.
weekend. I just remembered that.
Oh yeah, because every time Spain wins the Euro Cup, a Spaniard wins the next race. Something like that was there
Don't even
on
know what you're
Twitter.
talking about. No, they've just been doing very well.
Which race were you watching? Which year is it?
Uh,
It's not 2003, by the way.
no, I was watching 2023 and they were doing quite well. No, jokes aside, actually, I'm gonna predict Alonso to do well in my predictions.
Define well.
Just because last time I said Ferrari would fall apart, and
It did. It fucking did. I hate you for that, by the way. Just after Monaco, he said, "Look, now Ferrari has hit a high. They might hit a low next."
Yeah,
And
Mobile
that
was on
low
the
has not
podcast.
ended. Yeah, he was here. And that low has not ended.
Remember, Mobile said the last time we were on the podcast, we basically ruined Ferrari, so we should do another one.
So what are we ruining next?
We're not ruining anything. Alonso said that they have now got the balance back and slightly faster in Silverstone. He was really happy with it. They're bringing the upgrades they've been waiting for to Hungary. So I'm going to say this is where Alonso enters the championship.
To the championships.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's do that. Okay. Finally, the final top 3 predictions. Mobile, for fuck's sakes, please give a prediction this time around.
Well, I think... I'm going to say Lawson. I mean, come back to me in four weeks and I'll tell you. No, I'm going to say... this is a tough one. I'm going to say Russell to win because I just said Mercedes won't be good on race day. So obviously I'm going to pick Russell to win. Because that makes sense. I'm going to say Russell, Norris, Alonso.
Jeez.
Because if that
really going
happens,
with
it
it.
means we've gotten a fucking brilliant race.
And championship.
And
The last
Alonso's going to win the championship in 2026. So he needs to start practicing now because he's only been in the sport for 20 years.
I mean, at the front, he's not been there for a decade now. So, I mean, it takes getting used to.
The last driver to really almost get there in a Ferrari down to the last. Yeah. Yeah. But also as well, Hamilton broke the curse, the 300 race curse. So Alonso should win now.
Oh, it doesn't count. He's Hamilton. We don't. Yeah.
Yeah. Alonso's going to be the first driver since Fangio to win in his 50s or something.
I mean, you can't count him out, can we? I mean, we
Every
can.
other team has. So, yeah.
Someone has to.
Right, what's your predictions
my,
here?
Yeah, my top 3. I'm going with Lando, Oscar.
McLaren 1-2.
Max.
Actually, both of you put a McLaren 1-2.
Yeah. He went with Oscar.
Fuck. Did I get my prediction right the last time we were on this podcast? Because I got
You've never got the prediction right.
I put Guan Yu Zhou in P3, I think. So forget that. Yeah.
He's yet to score points. But look, it's not for Joe. It's not as bad as Bottas, who's 21st in a 2020 grid.
Oh my god, yeah. And yet I still have arguments from people telling me he's better than Perez. Fuck off.
Yeah.
I'm just going to use the fanboy spinner real quick. So according to the fanboy spinner, for some reason, once again, it has picked Guan Yu Zhou. So I'm going to spin again.
Yeah.
Maybe this is just the Zhou spinner. It says Piastri's going to win.
Let's go with it. I mean, it would be fun. F1 needs more winners.
Yeah.
We have how many? We have 8 right now, isn't it? 8 or 9. Wow.
Jesus.
Who has
How many?
not
We've
won?
had 6 winners this year, right? I know obviously not new winners, but I just mean 6 winners so far in 12 races, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Overall,
Jesus.
12 winners. So, who all has not won? We have Logan, who has not won. Yes, true. Yeah, that's it. 8.
Wow. That's amazing, actually, when you think about it. That's a really good grid
That's
of
a
people.
60%. That 60% grid is a race winner.
Yeah.
Nuts.
And one of those race winners will be driving for Haas next year. It's just a terrible thought.
Yeah. Oh god. It's such is life. Okay, guys, I think we should wrap it up now. Thanks for watching. I think we've covered everything from Donald Trump's assassination attempt to what else? To Hungary. So we've tried to
I
cover
still feel
everything
like this was
possible
our
under the
most
sun.
composed podcast. If
I
I'm
think we've
honest.
done worse.
So, I feel like this is the one with the least amount of fucking just off the rails chat.
Yeah, I mean we yet to talk about the Max Mosley orgies and stuff.
I think like Max Mosley, we've been kind of fucked to death on that one. So I think we should probably leave it alone.
We might. Anyways, thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And by the way, the last podcast that we put out, it did well. We got decent amount of views, decent amount of subscribers. Thanks to the new subscribers.
Was that the one
Bring
that I
your
titled
friends on
Lewis
board.
Hamilton's last win? Of course it did well. It's just a lot of angry people. It's all you
That's
have
why
to
this
do on
one-
YouTube.
That's why this one will be Lewis Hamilton was handed his championships by Mercedes. Let's have the other crowd as well. Anyways, a lot of shit talking has been done. Drop a comment, tell us how good this was, or how bad or how shitty this was. Take care, bye bye.